Today's guest is the only person I know who can make CEOs pivot, investors sweat their portfolios, and marketers torch their entire playbook all before breakfast. He's a three-time public company CMO. He's the best-selling author of Play Bigger, Niche Down, and his latest, The Existing Market Trap. He's also the godfather of category design, host of Follow Your Different. In short, he's the Gordon Ramsay of business, blunt, brilliant, and guaranteed to tell you your strategy tastes like dog food. He doesn't often do podcasts, but when he does, they are unforgettable. Chris Lochhead, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex. That was great. I'll take the Gordon Ramsay all day. Actually, it's funny you say that because I've been to Hell's Kitchen in Vegas a few times, and it's one of the things that's amazing about what he does there. Actually, there's several. There's pictures of. Have you been?
No.
So he's got pictures of many of the chefs that have been on the show, and I guess he features many of them in his restaurants. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this field, but so it's very cool that he's sort of celebrating all these other chefs, which I think, and he's a category king, right? He's designed this category, him and a handful of others, of celebrity chef here in the United States. And the fact that he celebrates the other chefs is really cool. And then the other thing is, if you go into most chain restaurants, and I know he's a high-end boutique chain, but they're still chain-y, if you will. It's not an independent only. They sort of, there's no love. My favorite restaurants where I live I know the owners and the chefs, and the level of give a fuck is really high. And so you don't expect that in a restaurant in Vegas. And I'll tell you, the food is off the chain, and the service is very high, and the level of give a fuck is very high at Hell's Kitchen, at least in Vegas. So, and I'm years ago, I took my mother to Vegas for the first time to see Cher. And we're going back this fall, and that was the first thing she said she wanted to do. So I'm going to take my mom back to Hell's Kitchen, or to Hell's Kitchen for the first time. So looking forward to that.
Well, it's interesting that we're on this food metaphor, because one of my favorite other business communicators, other than yourself, Steve Jobs, has this quote that kind of I repeat to my team on a regular basis. It goes along the lines of, you guys baked a beautiful cake, but for frosting, you covered it with dog shit. And it feels like this is a big metaphor for a lot of things. We in our business, where we transform important ideas into consumable experiences, for us, this is kind of our metaphor. Like, you have all this valuable stuff inside a PDF that nobody wants to read, But in the broader theme, there's a lot of people working on brilliant products, brilliant marketing tactics, and then they don't wrap it together, or don't think from the very beginning of how to wrap it together into a category that is, a heat-seeking missile for the right consumers. And so they waste a lot of potential, waste a lot of resources. And I think we're living through the moment.
We actually did this.
Did the math, right? So tell our audience, right? Like,
did you see that? Did you see it by any chance?
This is the AI one. This is the let me find the statistics. I have my Kindle here, or maybe you could tell us. This is
I'm happy to tell you, but
117 or over the 17 trillion has invested globally in startup, scale-ups, innovation.
13 trillion is going to be lost.
Okay, got it.
Statistics hold.
Okay, so
what we're predicting is that in the AI startup space, which a meaningful percentage of that investment number is in AI, as you'd expect, that approximately 13 trillion with a T will be lost in AI innovation and startups. For the simple reason, of course, nothing's quite this simple, but for one of the primary reasons being that 13 trillion will be given to innovators and entrepreneurs who chase existing markets, existing demand, with our carbidingulator is better than their carbidingulator strategy, and they'll get crushed. And so, we're about to witness the largest destruction in startup investments in human history because people are going to get stuck in the existing market trap.
And the way you describe it around your terms of languaging in the book is that you could kind of quickly catch it because it's the co-pilots and the bots and the assistants, and they're not the defining feature or defining characteristic of the new business.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a good? How do we help spot where's the likely waste going to be?
Yeah. So, and I'll say some things that some people might find, however they might find it, but I ask to consider what I'm about to say. So most people don't think. What they do is retweet in their head a thing they agreed with or agree with that somebody else said or that they thought was smart. And most people don't think about that thing. They just go, oh yeah, that sounds right. And then they say it. And they say it and they say it. And if you ask them, if they say the thing, and you ask them, well, why? Most people can't answer why more than once or twice. So if somebody says, I'm pro-choice, let's pick hot topics like abortion, or I'm pro-life.
Let's go on the pro-Palestine. I know that's one of your favorite.
Perfect. Let's go pro-Palestine. I'm pro-Palestine. By the way, I'm pro-Palestine too.
Yeah.
I think if you give a shit about the people of Palestine, the number one thing you want is the end of Hamas. For example, most people don't understand that approximately 40% of the children born in Palestine are inbred. And that's because the human beings, and in particular the women who live under Sharia law, live under the most oppressive conditions of anybody. It's probably worst of all in Afghanistan. And under Sharia law, they can marry women under 18, and they encourage marrying, and I'm putting marrying in air quotes, it's actually called raping, cousins and relatives. And so forget all about the current situation with the war and forget all about that for a second. You just look at it and go, what's going on in this society? What's going on in this culture? And you have a culture that is arguably the most oppressive to women on planet Earth. We hear these things about queers for Palestine. Well, yeah, there are no queers in Palestine because they get thrown off buildings. And they quote unquote marry girls who they're related to, and then they have people with them. And those people grow up with horrible medical conditions because all you have to do, go on the internet and ask your favorite AI, what does a person who is inbred suffer from in their life? Anyway, so my point is, most people, you say, oh, I'm pro-Palestine. Great, right. I'm pro-Palestine too. I want I have Palestinian friends. I want the people of Palestine to shine. I want there to be freedom. I want there to be equal rights for women and for children and for gay people in Palestine. I want Palestine to thrive the way Israel has. There's no tech entrepreneurship in Palestine. Israel is number 2. This tiny little country of less than 10 million people is number 2 in the world to the United States, only to the United States, in tech startups. My dear friend Giora Yaron is one of the founders of what today is called Startup Nation in Israel. And so how is it possible this nation in exactly the same geography? We're talking about a tiny geography, tiny, minuscule. We're talking New York to New Jersey at best. So why is it one culture's thriving and another isn't? Well, some of the problem, not all, some of the problem is the ethos of the culture. Anyway, most people don't think. So in category design, we teach people to think. As a matter of fact, the specific that we teach people to think. If category design is about creating different futures of massive value, you and I are living in a different future right now. We're on a technology called Zoom. Well, the person that wrote this product, that made this technology, is a guy named Eric Yuan. And I know Eric. He's been on my podcast. He's been to my house. He's a wonderful man. He's an immigrant to this country from China, and he's done an incredible job here. And he created a different future where you and I could have meetings over the internet and over our phone. And we're now living in the different future that Eric created. So if you're going to create different futures, how do you have to think? Well, the first aha is we teach category designers to reject the premise. Because the competition is not a company or a product. The competition for people who are category designing different futures is the status quo.
That's right.
And so if you're going to create a different future, the first thing you have to do is reject all of the thinking that created the status quo and try as best as possible. It's impossible for human beings, but as best as we can to think in unconstrained ways.
So let's go back to Eric for a second, if you don't mind. So obviously there were other web conferencing tools. In fact, he's built one before at the time of building Zoom.
He was the head of engineering for WebEx, and I think he was in, if I remember, in the top 20 first in the first 20 people hired at WebEx.
So even despite that, his competitor was not WebEx. His competitor were all the people that were not succeeding or trying WebEx because it just wasn't delivering the quality of the conversation that was needed. Is that how we should think about it?
So that's a product issue, which is very important. Product matters. Yeah. But what he did that was genius.
Tell me. Or tell us.
He did mobile first.
Uh-huh.
WebEx sucked on mobile. Probably still does. I don't know who the hell uses WebEx anymore. And so the genius of Eric Yuan is he redesigned the category around mobile first. And Zoom normally, unless you have a hiccup, which does happen, but Zoom normally is a one click and you're in. You'd have to sign into anything.
Right. So he reduced all that friction. He
reduced all friction. And most importantly, he realized if people are having mobile cloud meetings, maybe they're mobile.
Yeah.
And WebEx missed it.
He's redefined what mobility, because mobility back then was called like, here's my laptop, I'm moving it, right? Which I'm moving my laptop.
I'm walking around my laptop. Exactly. Yeah. And here's the craziest thing of all.
Yeah.
He said this to me personally on my podcast. He had these ideas when he was working at WebEx after it was acquired by Cisco. He was the head of engineering of WebEx when it got purchased. He went to his bosses and said, hey, and these are my words, not his, so I'm paraphrasing. We're sort of shitting it on the cloud. And most importantly, we're not mobile first. We got to rebuild the product from the ground up. And they tapped him on the head and said, hey, why don't you shut up and focus on the next release? So you know what he did?
So
he threw a party. He threw a party at his house with a bunch of rich people. And he said, I'm going to leave because these guys are dumb and they don't get it. Again, my words. He's much politer about all this. So, and then he raised a whole bunch of money from a bunch of rich people he'd made friends with in Silicon Valley and started Zoom and left.
Huh.
And by the way, he never had to raise any more money. The subsequent rounds of financing that he got all the way up into the IPO and beyond, he didn't need any of the money. He got to cash flow positive on the, I forget what it was, but on the money that he raised at that party.
So if we go back to that example and the kind of the problem that you pinpointed, the experience was horrible on mobile, not great in general, and yet smart people at WebEx that were stuck in their existing paradigm didn't measure the potential and the value around that experience that Eric proposed. So if we were to think about quantifying the experience, and because I think a lot of your examples of new categories, they do start somewhere with creating the type of experience that draws in the customers that are willing to do it, right? There's the category doesn't exist, the product doesn't exist, but somebody designed something that's so awesome that people are drawing in. So how do we measure that experience before the revenue impact of it, before we know Zoom is a success?
So we start with the thing that matters the most.
Hmm.
And that is, what's the problem we're solving and for whom are we solving it? And how is that problem different? Or how are we solving it in a different way? So there's only two kinds of problems. There's known problems that have some kind of a solution, and there's problems that are unknown or unacknowledged that once get acknowledged, people can't unsee.
Right.
And so you and I didn't have a problem called, how do I charge my smartphone in my car before the smartphone? And today, if you buy a modern car, many of them, you rest your smartphone on a little platform right underneath your dash, and it will wirelessly charge your phone.
Mm.
So my point is, that was an unknown problem. New categories create new categories. Smartphones led by Apple come out. People want to charge in the car. And somebody smart said, how do you charge your smartphone in the car if you don't have a wire? And they figured that out. And now it's standard in many modern cars. That's a new problem. Purell was a new problem. The entire soap industry thought they had it.
Right.
The problem definition, the status quo in soap was, you have a problem called dirty hands. You want to clean those hands. The answer is water and soap. And that was true for 100+ years, many years. And then
I remember these bars, they were so nasty.
Nasty as fuck, because we shared them. Then they're full of
Yeah.
hair and things.
Yeah,
Right.
And they cracked. Ugh.
And so the folks at Gojo Industries,
Yeah.
who category designed the liquid soap market as distinct from the bar soap market, about 80 years after that, somebody really smart there focused on the problem. And they asked a different, and I use that word on purpose, Alex, question. How do I, quote unquote, wash my hands in the absence of soap? Well, nobody had a problem called, I want to wash my hands without soap and water. Excuse me, in the absence of water. Nobody had asked that question. That wasn't a problem. And today there are many parents who won't leave the house without Purell because they bathe their kid and themselves in it wherever they go. Whole new category called hand sanitizer, cleaning your hands in the absence of water. And so Gojo Industries, by continuously thinking about the problem of clean hands and then being smart enough to reframe the problem.
Right.
And so one of the first things we teach category designers is the way to win is you want to frame, name, and claim a problem. And we hear a lot of talk, Alex, particularly in our world, in the tech world, where people's going, oh, you got to have a moat. What's your moat? Well, you got to have a moat. What's a moat? What's a moat? How are we going to build a moat? Blah, 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 all this moat stuff. The greatest moat in the world is owning the problem, because she who owns the problem becomes the solution.
So when you say Google it, that was the moat was that is a method of retrieving information. And no one is saying perplex it yet. But let's kind of shift it to our, like, a little bit from 80-year-old world to like the world today, what you cover in your latest book, where the pace of innovation is a bit overwhelming for most people, both consumers, and that's actually the biggest problems. I think consumers are not ready to change their habits at the pace that there's potential to change them, but also for folks like ourselves, like everything's changing so fast. How do you keep up with it? Can you change your category, every 3 months without losing it? What is your take of what's happening? Because there is a rush. So let's say people have read your work, are loving it, your work. I still think it's pretty hard to stay on top of it, especially if you have limited resources
Yeah.
to
So
figure it out.
Perfect. So, did you hear what you just said?
Limited resources part or
Just before that,
staying on top of it?
you said it's pretty hard to stay on top of it.
Yes.
What's the it?
The velocity of change in the industry is such that in especially horizontal, highly competitive markets with competent incumbents or relatively competent incumbents, innovation definitely in product, and I think in category to a lesser degree, is rapidly copied. So the time to ride the wave feels like it's shrinking. And things that could come out changing the expectations seem like they're popping up at a higher pace than, for example, when we were going through the SaaS revolution, where you had time to change the category and adapt, and you didn't, like, your competitor wouldn't be copying you right away.
Okay, so let's break that down. First of all, just off the top, back in the SaaS days, everybody said what you said about SaaS. And back in the birth of the internet, everybody just said what you said about AI and the internet. And back in the beginning of the PC and client server, et cetera, et cetera. So people are always saying, oh, the speed of innovation, and so that's always true. More importantly,
by the way, I will disagree with the SaaS.
Okay.
I think the pace there, we were like the big innovation that we were doing, quarterly releases with Salesforce and SuccessFactors. Right now we can do daily releases.
Every second. Look, if you're building agents, the future is beginning to reveal itself, right? That we're moving to an agentic future, and that agents will be talking to agents and will be improving agents. And your job will be less about managing and leading people and more about managing and leading agents. So the agentic future is beginning to present itself. But my point is, so yes, it's a step function. It's an exponential change in the rate of innovation and new categories. There's no question about that. But it always feels that when there's a big new
when you're in it feels like that. Correct.
It always feels that way. And then you adjust to the different speed and you get with the program. There's another part though, Alex, of what you're saying that I really want to sort of play with. It's hard to keep up with it. Okay, so let's do some Roger Martin, who many think is the greatest management thinker around today, the modern day Peter Drucker, very smart guy. I've had him on the podcast a couple times. And, he talks a lot about thinking. And so let's do some thinking about that. And we at Category Pirates say thinking about thinking is the most important kind of thinking. It's actually the first law of the 22 laws of category design is all about thinking. So keep up with it. If you pull back from that statement, what that statement is really, the context it's creating is there's this thing out there, the it, called the market or innovation, and it's changing. Okay, well, the first thing about that is who's changing it? Because it's not changing by itself. Most people treat markets like the weather. And I will assert to you here, let me just read this. So, NVIDIA announces their quarter. Okay, perfect. This is August 28th, 2025, Wall Street Journal. Even NVIDIA has speed limits, headline. Strong AI chip sales come up a bit short for markets only $4 trillion company. So strong AI chip sales come up a bit short. That's what the subhead says. And then NVIDIA's data center segment revenue surged 56% year over year to a little over $41 billion in the recent quarter. And then it says NVIDIA's outlook remains strong. So the interesting thing about this is the Wall Street Journal thinks markets are the weather. They had strong AI chip sales, but it came up a bit short for the market. Okay. Markets are not the weather. See, the weather just happens. If you fire up your browser, you turn on your TV, you look at the weather where you live and say, oh, it's going to be 72 degrees and partly cloudy. And that's a forecast of the weather. And best I could tell, unless you want to believe some of the conspiracy theorists, we have no control of the weather. It just happens. Well, we talk about markets like that. NVIDIA had a great quarter because of strong AI demand. As if NVIDIA was just sitting
tailwinds. There. Tailwinds is the most popular word.
Right. I'm just sitting here. Hey, man, I was sitting here on my mother's couch in my mother's basement in my underwear, drinking Budweiser, playing video games, and all of a sudden, strong sales just showed up. That's what Jensen was doing. And here's the aha. And when entrepreneurs get this, they have a life-altering moment. In November of 2023, which, if I'm not mistaken, is when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. It might have been 22, but if it wasn't 22, it was 23. We can look it up. In October of the month before they launched, the sum total market for generative AI globally was zero. There was no demand. There was no problem to be solved, and there was no solution to be bought. And then OpenAI launched. And most people think they launched a product, which they did. But what they really launched was a new category, a whole new, different category of the way we use technology. And that category today is the fastest growing category ever created by humans. And OpenAI is the fastest growing startup ever created by humans. And the month before they launched, total demand for what they do was zero. And so what's my point? Markets, just like products, just like companies, are things we can design.
So look, I'm one of your biggest fans, Christopher. So this is a privilege to test some of these ideas with you. But in the history of humanity, right, there is the French Revolution kicked off, happened, something, one party, another party, and then there was a freaking mess, right? And the mess was, you could say, yeah, somewhat predictable because there were actors and they had, opinions, but it was messy. It was like you didn't know what was going on. And it was sort of this sort of Cambrian explosion of violence and terror and whatever was going on, right? And so I think where my question is there is definitely this moment of truth with a new category, unleashing everything, perfect combination of UX, UI, velocity, consumer experience, brilliant. The market around it had enough competent people that are starting to embrace it, compete with it, go along, and it creates a lot of moves that are shaking each other up. And you can't really say there's this one event, this one company, this one genius company figured it out, and then the next thing is there. So my brother is a chief business officer at Perplexity. They came up with a great category competing with Google at some point. Maybe it's a category, maybe it's not. But then now everybody has copied that and they have to go chase the new experience, even though again a great successful company, the pace is increased. So I suppose the underlying
But
question
here's
is not.
Perplexity's problem, and I'm a
Yeah.
fan. I use the technology, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I have some of the stock. But that said, they get an F on category design.
So you don't. So they basically quickly designed a great product, but it wasn't enough of a category. That's your.
They didn't even try to design a category.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm trying to see. At one point, they were calling themselves like search something. I don't know what they call themselves now. Hold on. They're saying it's a free AI powered answer engine. Yeah, but at one point they were not calling it that. They were calling it something search related. They were essentially positioning it as Search 2.0, and that was their fall down. The irony is,
but they were damning. But hold on, they were to use your metaphor. They were damning the demand from Google, right? Like they were.
I understand.
Maybe they didn't do a great job at.
But they devalued themselves by. So you can damn the demand without calling yourself what the other thing called itself.
The 2.0. Like the moment you call yourself 2.0, you already lost the game. You're fucked, right?
You're already done.
Okay,
right?
Got it. That's really helpful. Or the moment you say, I'm this on steroids, which is another common phrase that I hear, then you're like, forget it.
Done.
You're done. Okay.
Because you're playing a comparison game. There's a simple exercise we do with category designers. It goes like this. I'm going to ask you to think about something and just that one thing. Excuse me. I'm going to ask you to not think about something and think about anything other than that thing. Okay? Pink elephants, pink elephants, pink elephants. Don't think about pink elephants. Think about anything you want, not pink elephants. Think about anything you want to think about, anybody you want to think about. No pink elephants. Under no circumstances, pink elephants. What's in your mind?
A huge body of pink elephants covering up. I'm writing on top of a pink elephant. Yeah.
The minute the idiots at Pepsi, and I say this on purpose, say, we're better than Coke. 4 out of 5 people say Pepsi tastes better than Coke. What's in your mind?
Coke.
They might as well Venmo their fucking marketing budget to
their
Coke.
Marketing. Yeah.
And so this is the mistake Perplexity made against Google. They were also fighting the wrong fight. The fight they needed to fight is for who is going to frame, name, and claim the new problem and therefore the new solution. Their competition to do that was actually Claude and OpenAI, et cetera, all the other AIs. And they should have been calling themselves something radically different. Like Answer Engine's smart, but that would have been smart 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Less so now.
Okay, so this is really interesting, right? Because when we were chatting earlier about success factors, where you helped us move away from the mediocre categories, and by the way, they weren't like, it's really funny to bring up the backstory. We were trying to improve the category,
sure,
in our best thinking at the time, right? Like we were like, performance and talent. It was employee appraisals, then like goal and performance management, performance and talent man, blah 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 blah, and it just kept like, but basically describing the product suite versus redefining the end results.
Well, I hate to interrupt you, but most companies are product out.
Yes.
And category designers are problem in.
That's right.
So when I showed up at Success Factors, the problems seemed to be very obvious to me. And when I sat down with Lars to tell him about it, you could sort of see his mind expand because it was sitting under everybody's noses. But look, I'm an entrepreneur too. We all fall in love with our shit. Yes. Matter of fact, we made the mistake. Our new book starts off by talking about this should have been the first book. Because our first book is mostly about the solution called category design. And while we talk about the problem that category design solves, we don't frame it, name it, and claim it. We didn't take our own damn advice because we're entrepreneurs too. We're so the existence of the thinking that says the best product wins is so omnipresent. Even those of us who make a living doing category design launch the product first, not the problem.
Right.
And with,
so we're
with the
solution
prequel,
first. So the number one mistake is
solution first.
Solution first.
Problem first.
Problem first. Okay, got it.
Right. And actually, to complete the story, one of the things I did with Success Factors back in the day when the company was performance and talent management and the growth rate was sort of stalling and the competitive landscape was getting tougher, was I said, well, walk me through the product and specifically some of the new things that are coming. And you probably remember better than me, there was a product for the executive suite that was called, if I'm not mistaken, something like goal cascading or something like that. So the CEO could create the 3 to 5 key goals for the company for the quarter or the year or the whatever it was. And then, quote unquote, cascade that down so that if you were my boss and we were doing sort of my personal plan for the quarter and how I was going to be evaluated, you would have the goals of the CEO there. And when you created my plan for the quarter, or we created it, my plan had to, quote unquote, tie to the overall corporate objectives. Remember this?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Okay, so with that, I said to myself, okay, if goal cascading is a product or a feature, what's the problem it's solving?
Execution.
The company's ability to execute.
Yeah.
Right? Because if the CEO says these are the 3 goals, then clearly what she wants the rest of the company to do is go execute and produce the results to achieve those 3 goals.
Yeah.
So it's about executing. Aha.
You could have the best culture in the world if it's not driving towards the goals that you set, which was kind of like the HR. Oh,
right.
We're nice people. We're great. Everybody loves working here. But
and so if you stand back and ask yourself 5 to 7 times, this goes back to the thinking. This goes back to reject the premise. And this goes back to unshackle yourself from the way that it is today and ask myself 5 to 7 times, what is the real problem we're solving? And that's what gets you to the big aha. Oh, it's not about performance appraisals or goals. It's about, can the CEO produce the results every quarter? And can she align the company against those goals and results so that they are A, clear, and B, they have what they need to go get that done? Right? Because the biggest problem in business today, most people don't know what a result is.
And so I will give you credit on 2 areas on this in particular, and I'll challenge one area where maybe you could help us see the nuance from a buyer, junior buyer versus a senior buyer. So the CEOs loved it. Obviously, this is like the CEO level messaging. The HR leaders that wanted to get a board, knew where the board table was, wanted to get there, if they got there, could, communicate without screwing it up. They got it and got promoted. So that worked. The investors loved it. It helped us move the company public. I wrote a ebook, how to leverage your SAP investment or kind of not salvage it so that you get this business value from it. That obviously helped was the acquisition. So I think SAP liked it. They almost repeated that same playbook when they bought Qualtrics. Kind of was the same hope a few years later. But,
and by the way, do you know who did the category design?
Well, of course Qualtrics? I know that it's written in your book, right? So why do you think you're here?
I just thought it was because my mom told me I'm incredibly handsome.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I have a face for podcasting, but anyway.
Yeah, I can see you even shaved for this one. But I will tell you the challenge. There was a challenge of somebody who was a mid-level HR, sufficiently enough in decision maker, let's say in the mid-market company. They wouldn't know what BizX was if you hit them over the head with it. They were afraid of it. They were afraid of the price point. And we still, was the suite that we had some of those buyers could still go and buy
Sure.
beautiful performance
Sure.
appraisal software. So I think there's this tension that sometimes we design for the senior buyer or for the investor community, and then there is still the existing buyer, influencer, maybe like a wannabe champion that needs to be communicated in the
Sure.
language that is yours. So help people navigate through that, because I think often I've made the mistake of trying to create a brilliant category that nobody understood except for maybe, people that read your stuff. Right? They were like, oh,
Yeah.
So that was not, obviously didn't work, but that is let's say it did, we'd still have the problem of connecting with the people who are still living in the past but have budgets, and we need to tap those budgets.
Okay, good. I love this. So the first piece is the examples we're on right now are B2B enterprise tech.
Correct.
And we can talk about not different markets if you want. But in that market, here's the aha that most CEOs and most marketers and most CROs don't always get. The highest market cap companies in the history of B2B enterprise win in the C-suite. They win in the corner office. Because maybe when you're starting out, you can create a micro niche category that appeals to somebody lower down in the org chart, and they have spending authority to spend 20 grand or whatever it is.
20, 50, up to 20 grand, 10 grand easy. You could build SMB departmental solution.
Yeah. And that's great. And by the way, in SMB, you can be one of the most powerful companies in the world in SMB. I'm working with an AI company called Virtuous AI today, and they are creating an AI for SMBs because SMBs are terrified that the Global 2000 is investing trillions in AI, and they're just going to get run over. And right now, interestingly, startups and SMBs have a window that's probably a 24 to 36 month window, which is they can execute at a speed with which the S&P 500 cannot.
That's right.
And so what Virtuous AI is doing is building business AI for that startup and SMB world so that they can gain a massive advantage by executing on AI more quickly. Anyway, so I think this is
let's come back to that, by the way, because I think the regulated industries and functions, which is probably half of the economy, if not more,
very tough time. And the other thing is governance right now. I mean, AI governance is a number one issue. And the reason the major investment banks and many S&P 500 companies have not embraced AI is because they don't want all their proprietary intellectual capital being dumped into ChatGPT, which makes all the sense in the world. If I'm Goldman Sachs and I'm writing an S1 to take Relayto public, and I want to collaborate with ChatGPT on that S1, I'm going to dump the Goldman Sachs template for S1 filings into ChatGPT. The whole world's going to have it then. Anyways, so governance.
Morgan, we're going with Morgan. All right, but
excellent. And transparency matters a lot, et cetera, et cetera. But that said,
so we were on the enterprise. So to come back to this,
so you don't win in the enterprise unless you win in the corner office. Period. End of discussion. Yes, you can build a several $100 million company at the $20,000 level if you really get it right and be departmental or what have you. But ultimately, if we go back to Success Factors where we met, I'll never forget Jay Larson, who is effectively the number 2 guy in the company. He said to me when he first called me and wanted to introduce me to Lars, and I have a great relationship with Jay. I love him, respect him deeply. We've been in lots of foxholes together. And I said to him, so Jay, why are you calling me? Like, what's the problem? And he said, I'll tell you it in the simplest way I think about it. Our current sales deck is the fastest way to get kicked out of the C-level office and kicked down into the bowels of HR. Right? So he knew it. He knew it. You have to matter in the corner office if you're in the B2B space, and you're going to sell at any kind of meaningful level. If you're going to get to hundreds of thousands or millions and millions of dollars worth of sales, there's just no way. Nobody's going to spend $1 million or more on an annual basis on software unless a senior person with a C in their title has a conversation that has a meaningful spending authority. And so that's the first piece. You got to understand that. The second piece is most companies waste a ton of time selling to people who can only say no. So you got to get up that org chart to the people who can make the decisions. Now, it doesn't mean that the people who can make recommendations but can't say yes aren't important. They're important influencers in the account, and getting them on their side matters. And absolutely, is the CEO going to turn and look to one of the top technical folks and say, hey, Jimmy, did you check out the carbonidulation on this thing? And are you sure? And I'm going to have to go to the board, and you positive? And they're going to look at that, and she's going to ask some tough questions, and there's better be good answers. So those people matter. I'm not saying they don't matter, but winning in the corner office is the first thing. The second thing is, when you're creating a complex B2B category like that, what you're building to communicate it is this thing called a POV, a point of view. And the POV is a very simple thing. It's been around for a long time. You frame, name, and claim the problem. You then position the solution. By the way, if you do the problem right, the solution becomes pretty obvious to people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's why we say spend 80% of the time on the problem, market the problem, market the problem. The solution speaks for itself in that case. Oh, the other interesting thing about market the problem, Alex, there's a weird thing that goes on in the human mind. When somebody articulates our problem powerfully, more effectively than anyone else, we just assume they have the answer.
That's right.
So like, well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
We don't then say, oh, how do you solve it? We assume they know because they got it.
Yeah.
So the POV frames, names, and claims the problem, positions the solution, and then the third piece is shows you how to go from problem to solution. Okay. So think about that as a structure, as a framework. That's an accordion. It opens and closes. So at the C level, you only have to talk about the high level stuff and maybe some of the details, but that's about it. The lower you go in the org chart, the more you have to open the accordion.
Pick and choose which parts of the accordion you want to emphasize, depending.
The CEO is probably not going to ask you whether you're hosted on AWS or not. That's probably not going to happen.
Well, I started at Microsoft, and they were famous. Ballmer and Gates for actually drilling down to see if people did their homework.
Well, sure. And smart CEOs do that.
The smart CEOs do that to some degree, but you're absolutely right. That is kind of, again, the accordion.
Yeah. And so as part of your POV and as part of how you train your product folks and your SEs and obviously your sales folks and now your agents, because make no mistake, we're moving into a world where agents are doing more and more sales. As a matter of fact, I saw this just recently. Let me grab this for you, Alex, because this is a wake-up call for all the donkeys who say AI is not happening. Salesforce has publicly announced that they used AI to replace 4,000 customer service folks.
Yeah.
So anything that's a repeatable process, it's going to be solved by AI and specifically agents that are tapping into LLMs, right? And so that's where we're headed. And so you've got to be able to develop your category design. And if you have a complex B2B sale, you're going to have to be able to have different conversations that are anchored deeply to your category POV at different levels of the organization, for sure. You got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
So let's tackle another topic that you cover, one of the sins that you cover in your latest books, and which is building a horizontal tool. I when I read that chapter, I was like, oh, I intellectually knew it, and I still built. When I started building our platform, a little bit by virtue of customers pulling us in these directions, but I was not definitive enough on narrowing it down, and I ran into all sorts of problems. So I want to get your perspective that you could share with our audience. What does that mean? And this is kind of probably the opposite of the enterprise folks, right? Like in this sort of no code or like tools that are built flexibly, they can do absolutely everything for everyone. What is the risk there for the business if they go down that route?
So the horizontal tool problem, simply stated, is typically product/engineering folks and typically sales folks don't want to get pinned down. The engineering folks want to build whatever the hell they want. And the sales folks want to be able to walk into a customer and say, oh, what do you have budget for? Oh, yeah, we do that.
Nobody wants to settle down. Nobody wants to get married.
Nobody wants to get married and have kids. They want to free ball it all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Play the game. Yeah. Right? So, and they get crushed as a result.
Yeah.
And a simple example are my friends at Splunk. Splunk did an unbelievable job at category design in the beginning, primarily around unstructured data, or data lakes, some people called them, and this kind of stuff. Well, this was a company committed to the horizontal tool trap. And they rode their initial category success, but then as the category changed, to your point earlier, and morphed into even bigger things, new startups, Datadog, Databricks, a whole bunch of these companies came out. There's one other I'm forgetting. There's one big one that came out.
Snowflake.
Snowflake. Thank you. Snowflake.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. These guys all moved the category into a new and different place. They stole the agenda from Splunk. They stole the category, which is what happens when somebody else reframes your problem and makes your problem less relevant and their problem higher order bit more relevant, which is exactly what Snowflake did to them.
So basically Legos, hey, I have a set of Legos, is a hard category to maintain. Like,
you want to build a house, you want to build a car, you want to build a person. It's impossible. And Splunk's market cap stalled, and they ultimately got acquired by Cisco, where they've gone to die. And Snowflake and Databricks and Datadog and these new companies continue forward. This is what happens every time. And so if you are unwilling to pick particularly in the beginning, although it always matters, Alex, a very clear problem that is experienced by a very clear set of people, and then own that problem, you're going to win. And the horizontal tool thing is, no, we want to own all the problems. This is, look, the BI space, the biggest mistake ever made in BI was there were no BI vendors that committed to a certain thing. Look at Anaplan as an example. Anaplan was successful essentially because it was modern BI focused on financial planning. It was basically a BI company focused on a use case. And that's how they won.
Yeah.
Whereas
so go ahead. No, I didn't mean to. So I just, for our audience, right, just to kind of, you were honest about your challenges earlier, where you the category designer did not name the problem.
Of course, we're entrepreneurs first, category designer second.
As a fan of your work, I built a beautiful horizontal solution for transforming static content, important ideas into, not stuff not covered with dog shit for Steve Jobs. But I forgot to make a strong point of view on where this matters the most and for whom, and to quantify that, because I was greedy. And I wanted to. I was like, I want to be.
We all are, and it's not just greed. It's we want to stay open. We want to appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I want to
be able to talk to anybody.
In love with me. I want everybody to love me.
I want to serve as many people as possible. I'm gonna have a service orientation.
It's ambition.
I'm a servant leader.
or it could be like ambitious, right? Because I think we're fooled by thinking that these companies that are the ones we all respect now, that they serve everybody and everything, that we think that they kind of were born like that, and obviously they weren't, right? Like I think that is the other delusion. And now that we're focusing on these regulated, by the way, we're focusing on regulated and boring verticals, and where that, it's essential to get the information right, but it sucks your soul away to read the PDF version of that disclosure and documentation.
Well, and I think I think what you're doing, it sounds like, is exactly what there is to do. You can have the giant vision. So if we move to the B2C space,
yes.
We had Mark Randolph on the podcast. Mark's the founder of Netflix. And he wrote a great book I think the book's called This Won't Work. It's fucking great. And the stories are amazing. Anyway, he tells the whole story in the book, and he certainly did with me on the podcast, of how the company came to be. He was specifically looking for a big idea. I won't walk you through all of it. But when they landed on movies, and specifically DVDs through the mail, these were not stupid people, Mark Randolph and Reed Hastings. Far from it. Reed Hastings was a B2B guy. He was the founder of, was either Pure or Atria. I can't remember which, because they merged to form Pure Atria. I think it was Pure, but I could be wrong. Anyway, Reed's a B2B guy until Netflix. Anyway, so they did all this testing and they figured it out. And they figured out there was a way to mail DVDs by the mail. And I remember meeting those guys at a Foundation Capital Schmooze and Booze in either 99 or 2000 and talking to them about this and saying, well, I get the mail thing and all that and love your service. It's great. But like, what are you going to do? We all know where the tech's going, and sooner or later, we're going to be able to do this on the internet. And they said, absolutely. But back then, most people were still on dial-up. And so they said, we've got to wait for the internet to be able to deliver this kind of content. They didn't call it streaming back then because that category name didn't exist. So what's my point? My point is Mark and Reed knew where this thing was ultimately going to go in terms of streaming. But they also knew that if they waited for that, they'd be dead.
It's going to miss the point, yeah.
So
they taught people on the subscription model, because that was back then an innovation as well.
An innovation unto itself. Yeah. And I just had Cien on from
Tien Zhu.
From Tianzhu from Zuora on, and actually he's going to come back. So I actually think he's a fascinating guy.
I worked for Tien at Salesforce. So
did you really?
Brilliant, yeah, like very articulate.
I really liked him actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, and so they knew there was a bigger category to be created and a bigger game to be played for the company and a bigger set of things they wanted to do in the beginning. But they started narrow, subscription, mail. And then as the technology expanded in capability, they continuously expanded their category design. So much so that they were the first platform streamer to get into the content business.
That's right.
Remember,
it's multiple.
There were no Apple movies. Yeah, there were no Amazon movies. That none of those things existed, right? They were the first to say, well, not only are we going to stream other people's content, we're going to create our own. And of course, we know the legendary success that came after that.
Well, and I think our civilization is going to decline now because everybody's watching movies thanks to how innovative these guys are. So they got to stop at some point. But
as somebody who loves comedians and live comedy, they completely changed the future for comics and comedian fans. Or anyway, but my point is this: if you think about Netflix as an example, if you're a startup founder and you have a very big vision for ultimately where you want to go, but you want to avoid the horizontal tool trap. What there is to do is to go narrow in the beginning and then do what Netflix did and expand out.
Yeah. So let's shift gears for a second. There are some people here that are not entrepreneurs, but they want to think entrepreneurially about their life and their career. You're the first principles thinker that thinks about thinking. What should we as humans, professionals, be thinking about our own future in this age of AI? Well, and especially those of us with kids that, or people that we want to help nurture and grow. How can we prepare for the, let's say, Cumbrian explosion of innovation and change that is going to come, knowing that the technology has a much higher capacity for moving, transforming than we human species in adapting to that technological change?
Okay. So the answer to your question is something that we think should be on the front cover of the Wall Street Journal and pretty much everything all the time, and it's not.
You heard it here. All right, let's do it.
Okay, so if you take a step back for a second, the legendary Peter Drucker wrote a book in 1959. That book's called The Landmarks of Tomorrow. And in that book, he introduces a new category of employee, a new category of career, a new category of work that he calls the knowledge worker. And if you read that book, what you'll find, and you look at Drucker's work, is what one of the things he was pointing out to people and wanting people to be able to understand was work was changing, and that there was this new career path. And knowledge worker as distinct from manual labor, to distinguish people who made money with their muscles versus their minds. And this, of course, was part of what led to a massive boom in education and the number of people graduating high school. And of course, now in the United States of America, an undergraduate degree is considered a prerequisite, just like at one point in time, a high school diploma
We
was
could
a
argue
prerequisite.
it defeated communism and socialist variety of that.
I think you could argue that,
yes,
in many ways. And if you look up,
and I would like to thank very much my friends from the former Soviet Union, which I escaped very gladly that happened. All right.
When did you get out of the Soviet Union?
I was a teenager. I was 13 years old, but I could still fake my dad's accent very well and do my Borat. Yes. So but I think it was.
So if you look, I was just looking on Wikipedia. The first line in the Wikipedia about knowledge worker says, knowledge workers are workers whose main capital is knowledge. Okay.
What is the main capital now?
Good question. Here's what we would propose. If you look at what's happening with AI today, Alex, AI makes the value of existing knowledge decrease every day. So think about anything you wanted to study in university. You want to become a Bible scholar. Now, would it be great to spend some time with Bible scholars and teachers and the like? For sure. And you can pretty much become a Bible scholar with AI. Look at what just happened this past quarter. And so far this year, 2025, Gartner Group has lost 50% of its market cap that it spent 40 years building. Why? People in the knowledge regurgitation business are fucked. Because AI makes the value of existing knowledge closer and closer to free every day. And even more, it makes our ability to do things with that knowledge more powerful and closer to free every day.
So knowledge is becoming free. Content production is becoming free. These are the jobs that an average middle manager spends a lot of time on. Communication.
I just read a report, Alex.
Yeah.
Jobs for new college graduates in the United States are down 13%. Why? Because when they come out of college, what do they have? A head full of existing knowledge with no experience. AI is replacing book smart knowledge.
Yes. Yes.
Book smart, not street smart. So to answer your question, who are the people who are going to be successful? What does street smart look like in this now post-AI world that we're living in? Not knowledge regurgitation. Gartner's lost 50% of its value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wouldn't want to be the CEO of McKinsey today. I wouldn't want to be the CEO of Bain today. I wouldn't want to be the CEO of Booz Allen. Or anybody who packages and sells existing knowledge is in deep shit. So, and knowledge workers inside of corporations.
And you would not be allowed to be the CEO of Accenture because Julie Sweet is not using the F word on the basis that we are here.
Well, this is an old story, but I had an opportunity to become the chief marketing officer of Gartner many years ago, and I literally laughed. I was like, "You guys are out of your fucking mind. I'd hate you, and you'd hate me."
All right. So
anyway,
so basically, we
so
don't want to be
aha.
knowledgeable. So
you can't be a knowledge worker anymore.
Okay.
And most people working in corporations today are knowledge workers. And so what do you want to be? You want to be this thing you could think of as a creator capitalist, somebody who creates net new knowledge and capitalizes on it, either for themselves or their employer. Said in a more simple way.
This is the new category. This is a new category.
We believe this is the new category.
You just framed the problem before, right? By the way, just so for our audience, so that they're paying attention how the master does it. So that was the problem for humanity and our future careers. What we thought were the most desirable jobs are no longer such. And this is the new category, so creator capitalist. But explain it to us.
Did I do a good job framing the problem?
I liked it. I believe it too. I am figuring out how to make what the new thing is. I'm not sure I know the solution as clear as you yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really curious to get your take,
Yeah, let's dig into it. It's great. And by the way, anybody who says they're an expert on this stuff is full of shit. It's all happening so fast. It's so new. Nobody's an expert. Not even the most expert AI programmers will tell you they're experts, which is part of what makes it cool and fun. Look, Alex, I'm glad I'm alive for the beginning of AI.
It's fun. It's fun.
Right? So who's going to be successful going forward? Nobody in the knowledge regurgitation business. It's going to be people who learn to create net new knowledge, net new value with AI. And the way to think about this, earlier you talked about how many of the tech companies are using language like, oh, it's a companion. Oh, it's a co-pilot. Oh, it's an assistant. I have an AI assistant. Okay, so category design. Step back. Think. Listen to the words and reject the premise so that you can think in an unencumbered way. Co-pilot. Assistant. What that languaging is a category design term. It's the strategic use of language to frame thinking and to change thinking. So what that languaging suggests is, oh, I have my main thing here and I bolt it on over here. So if we talk about Zoom, God bless Eric, love him and the company. However, they're making this mistake. They call it their AI companion. So sometimes the unspoken is louder than the spoken. So years ago, I told my stepmother, Nellie, I showed her a new tattoo that I'd got. And I said, hey, Nellie, I just got this tattoo. What do you think? And she says to me, I'm really glad you like it. So the unspoken, very loud. She had that kind of sense of humor. Yeah. So when you say companion, what's the unspoken? The unspoken is, oh, well, our main thing is this, and we're adding on AI. It's a sidecar. It's a bolt-on. Yeah. And here's the aha. And this is true for everybody's career. I'm leading somewhere with this. AI is your career. AI is not a bolt-on to the thing. AI is the thing. AI, the mindset we recommend for individuals is AI is the co-founder and co-creator of my career all day, every day. Yeah. And the same for startup founders. AI is a co-founder of your company. And so when you make it that central, and here's a simple thing. We recommend today.
So basically, I'm going to use this metaphor because some companies have mascots. So we need AI as the mascot in a company, right? It's as simple.
No, it's a co-founder. It's actually not the mascot. It's one of the founders.
One of the founders. Okay, so I got it wrong. Okay.
Yeah. We may be getting lost in translation. Yeah.
All right.
And here's a recommendation we have for everybody.
All right. Let's hear it.
If you are using the free publicly available AIs, and that's your AI experience, you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and you haven't really used AI. What we recommend, don't get your company to pay for it. You want to do this. Pay for the $200 a month ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever your favorite ones are. What you want to have is your own proprietary AI. And this is exactly what we've done at Category Pirates. We dumped everything we've ever written, every deliverable we've ever created, all of it into our own proprietary custom ChatGPT, the $200 a month version.
So it's not shared with the rest of the world.
So it's not shared.
So that they can't write those beautiful emails that you do that feel like poetry.
Thank you. Because that's exactly right. And so here's the aha. You and your career, anybody listening, what I'm saying to you is cough up the money, spend it, because what you want to do, it's a massive investment in your ability to produce results. Because those of us, the way AI is, when you build your own custom proprietary AI with everything that you know in your domain, and you use that on an ongoing all-day basis to produce results with AI, create net new value as opposed to regurgitate old knowledge, be what's called a creator capitalist. You're creating with AI. In software development, they call it vibe coding. You talk to AI and the AI writes the code. Well, in the non-software world, for creator capitalists, we call it vibe creating. So once you have your own proprietary AI that you have trained on all your data and that you talk to and use all the time, guess what? You get a flywheel of legendary happening. And now, the way I feel personally, just me personally, since we've done this at Category Pirates, with the writing that we do and the work with startups that we do and the courses we teach and I've had a 38 and a half year career getting really good with a sword and 2.5 years with a lightsaber. And I'm glad that I have all those sword skills. I really am. But I ain't going back. You can't have my lightsaber. Go fuck yourself.
All right.
I have a superpower now. I can fly.
What if you're starting out, Christopher? What if you're starting out?
This is what I would do right now.
You would, but you don't have. I don't like somebody starting out. They don't have an original, a body of work, a ton of original ideas. They're
Great.
Still
what's the thinking that you like? What's the thinking that works for you? Let's say you're in marketing. And you say, I want to build my own proprietary AI. Okay. And you pay the $200 a month for Chat. And I don't care what it is. We pick ChatGPT for a bunch of reasons, but if you want Claude, pick Claude. And if you want, whatever you want. But here's what happened. You can say, listen, here are the 10
Lochhead. Well, I love this guy. I love that.
Yeah. Here are the 10 marketing thinkers that have influenced me the most.
Yes.
And begin a conversation.
Yeah.
And tell the AI why. And ask the AI what it thinks of those 10 people. And then there could be entrepreneurs that you admire, et cetera, et cetera. There could be books that you've read that were hugely impactful for you. You could tell all the AI this, and you could say, these are the things that I've learned. These are courses I took in school. These are things I've learned in my early career. These are books that I love. These are thinkers that I love. These are online courses that I've taken. And here's some of the things that I've learned. So even if you're 18 years old, you have a thing that you can begin to contribute to your own proprietary AI that when you start working, you can start to vibe, create results. That's why it's called a creator capitalist. Somebody who creates things and capitalizes on them, creates value. And so creating value with AI is what a creator capitalist is. And if you're not doing that, if you're staying in the knowledge worker world, you're going to be toast. But if you learn to create net new value with AI on an ongoing basis, you are going to be the most successful, the most creative, and the most innovative humans alive. That's why being alive now is so cool.
So
listen,
people listening, yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
People listening to you right now, somebody's getting shivers down their spine. But what I would argue, one of the reasons for that is your ability to communicate and connect. It's your mic as well, as we were talking earlier, and your setup, but it is also a lifetime of being a CMO of publicly listed companies, honing the craft, connecting, interviewing other great communicators. And some people say, well, the AI has better emotional intelligence. They're getting like relationship advice. I have a buddy who's getting divorced. He is spending all his time with the AI, and kind of how to navigate through that. And so
I have a buddy doing the exact same thing, by the way. It turns out ChatGPT is an incredible divorce lawyer and therapist.
And children coach. And so there was this assumption that, well, the AI is not going to be better at emotional intelligence. We're going to be humans are still going to be great at being humans. But we know that AI at least is more polite and could cut through the bullshit that blinds us. But there's still something je ne sais quoi when you communicate that AI at this point is not capable of, cloning your interactions and your kind of superpowers of connecting. So what's your take on that element? Because it particularly in the communications world, but also like, again, people starting out, are my relationship skills is gonna matter? Are they not gonna matter as much as we think they are?
Oh, I think they're going to matter more. We could talk about that in a second if you like. As a matter of fact, I think we're in a relationship paradigm crisis in the United States, best that I can tell, particularly for young people. We can move there if you want. So here's the thing. So I got into an awesome dust up on LinkedIn with some dude who proclaims to be an AI instructor or professor at Berkeley, who was telling me everything I was saying about AI was bullshit, and it was hype. AI was hype. This guy teaches at Berkeley, for fuck's sakes. And here was his argument. So I just described to you what we've done at Category Pirates. We call our AI Lucy, and we use Lucy for everything. I'm in Lucy all day, every day. I write emails with Lucy. I mean, you name
love
it.
Lucy, basically. You love.
I love Lucy.
Okay.
And the more we use Lucy, the greater she gets, and it's a virtuous circle of awesome, and et cetera. And so this guy comes in and goes, oh, that's great for you right now, but with all new technology, everybody's going to be able to do the same thing, and then it won't matter. It won't be an advantage.
Because everybody loves Lucy.
Because everybody will have their own Lucy.
Yeah.
And I said to him, and this guy's very learned, Berkeley teacher, instructor, professor. I said, oh, okay. I like to watch racing. We live not that far from a racetrack. I go out a couple times a year. Buddy of mine's really into MotoGP.
Yeah.
It's really fun. I'm not like a huge fan, but it's really fun live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially here, we can go, and I mean, you can be right there in a corner, and it's amazing. And the whole thing's fun. So I said to this guy, I said, oh, okay. So just because every race car driver in the world can buy all the same parts, can have all the same expertise, so essentially drive equal cars and have equal resources, plus or minus.
Yeah.
Why is it there's one guy that wins a lot more than the others? Why is that? I thought you said we were all equalized now. You stupid fuck. And so just because you own a Ferrari doesn't mean you're going to win races. And so we look at it right now in our world, you know, some people might call us a media company, an education company, a content company. We think of ourselves as an education company. But are we going to be able to produce results that many others are not going to be able to produce because we're on the bleeding edge of AI? Yes. And what we're doing in terms of teaching and writing and creating with AI is orders of magnitude above what's happening in most of our universities. As a matter of fact, I got an email a couple of days ago, Alex, from a gal I know and respect very much, and her son, I believe he's in law school, and they banned him from using AI. They're literally cutting him off from the future. That's how insane they are.
Not even Harvey. They can't even use Harvey.
No, they can't use Harvey or Benny or Lenny or any of those.
Oh my God.
And so this is how insane we are. We should be teaching our children and our young people in our universities, in our colleges, in our community colleges, and absolutely our high schools, and all the way down to very early on how to create with AI. Doing the opposite is literal insanity, literally cutting our children off from the future. Anyway, it's insane to think it's an equalizer. The reality is just like any other technology. We all have laptops.
Yeah.
You started a company with your laptop. You've created massive value by typing on keys and looking at a screen. You've created PowerPoints and spreadsheets and other digital assets, documents that are worth many millions of dollars over time by going tick, 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 tick into your laptop. There's a lot of people go tick, tick, tick into their laptop and never produce anything of value.
So do you see that it's going to be, so there's some people believe it's going to be democratizer, and some people believe, right, which is what you're saying, is there's,
well, it's a democratizer for those paying attention. Most are not paying the fuck attention.
So right. So you need to, in order to benefit from democratization, you have to be hungry.
Well, and you have to know democracy is occurring.
Yeah.
Right? This is the biggest, look, here's the other way to think about knowledge worker to creator capitalist. The other lens on exactly the same phenomena is, so I'm 57 years old. And so what that means is I'm a Gen Xer. And Gen X is the last native analog humans to ever live. The millennials, and especially Gen Z, have grown up with the technology for the bulk of their adult lives. And obviously Gen Z from the very beginning. Even millennials, most of them had smartphones at reasonably early ages. Gen Z even more, of course. And so they are the first generations, millennials and Gen Z, of native digitals. And their entire orientation is different. Mm-hmm. See, their world is digital first, analog second.
Right.
And my world, and listen, I've been in the tech industry for 40 freaking years. I started my first company at 18. Okay. I'm very tech savvy. And I'm not a native digital, because even though you and I are having a powerful, awesome conversation on the internet, it's really great that we can do this. And I love everything about that we can do this. I'd much rather be sitting down together having a beer or a coffee.
Yeah.
In person. You ask most millennials and Gen Zers.
This is as close as it's going to get.
You ask a millennial or a Gen Zer after a Zoom meeting, what happened? What did you just do? And many times they'll say, we had an in-person meeting. This is not an in-person meeting for me. This is a digital meeting or a Zoom meeting. Well, here's another great example. Here's another great example. This is very important because it sounds so subtle as to not be significant, and the profundity of it is missed on most people. Here's how profound digital first versus analog second or vice versa is. If you invite me to your house for dinner and I arrive at your doorstep, as a native analog, this is a problem I understand. I'm outside your house and I want to be inside your house. And so there is a very known analog solution to this problem. There's actually two. One is I knock on the door, very analog. And two is I press a button that makes a noise. Still analog, a little more techie. You ask a millennial or a Gen Zer, you invite one over. What do?
They call you.
They stand at the fucking door and they text here. Same problem. A well-known analog solution for centuries, millennium. And now they reject, the millennials, the native digitals reject the analog solution.
Well, I'm glad my kids are ringing the bell like crazy instead of getting their key.
Well, that's very,
which means at least we're keeping them
very
grounded.
analog of them. Very analog of
very
them.
grounded.
Right. And so it's a very different world when it's run by people who are digital first, analog second. That's why if you talk to young people about dating, what they'll tell you is it's very hard today. And part of it is because they don't know how to, and this is the word they use, they don't know how to conversate.
Well, so this is the part that I'm worried about the younger generation, right? And this is back to the notion that we as humans have millions of years of, hunter-gatherers where we are walking and talking and, not even looking at each other, not sitting, but just literally walking and talking while looking for that deer or bison or whatever. And we were happy. We were programmed to be happy. This was the right level of activity together with physical activity together with social activity, as an example. And then we live in the world where you could mimic that in the digital, right? You could be, I actually like to do walk and talks with friends, right? But I'm literally,
I do walking meetings all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was an executive and when I was still on lots of boards and stuff, I living in California, I would do walking meetings all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are wired. We see the value of it. We read up like, hey, we get energy like that. But I worry about exactly what you're describing. The next generation, not only do they feel that that's uncomfortable, they don't have the skills and the practice to acquire the skills to have these conversations. And so they could be spending all their time chatting with ChatGPT, which is great and fun. And we all know it's great. And it's just like Wikipedia once upon a time was like that, right? Like we could go down that route. But, when do we pull up? Because to stay healthy as a human being, we are not wired to be talking to ChatGPT, at least in its current form. So what is your take on how do we maintain? That's back to that question, the humanity, the human connection skills. How do we agree to
So I think there's a couple of things going on here that are really important. So the first one is you and I desperately need each other. Human beings are such radically social animals that what's the number one form of torture we have?
Solitary confinement?
Correct. So just think about that for a minute. Remember, stand back and think. Why is locking a human alone in a room by themselves the worst torture we can think of?
We were built to survive in groups, and we were wired. The ones that survived were not hermits, but they needed and had to have the socialization to get energy, and they were rewarded for that.
Yes, we are pack animals. Why do we all live in cities on top of each other? We're pack animals. And so we desperately need each other. And so being able to be together in the analog world is profound for us. Here's the flip side of it, however, to your friend with the divorce. The AI is always there, always on, and right now they've programmed it to always be on our side. And if you go and look at some of the Kinsey data on sex, what you'll find is that young people are having sex later and later and less of it. And the amount of sex is declining dramatically. And here's why.
Isn't it great to be a Gen Xer?
Oh, fuck. Are you kidding me? The reason is primarily young men, and it's just too easy for them to have sex with the internet.
Yeah.
And they say it's not worth the hassle. I've had this conversation with them. I have lots of young people in my life. It's not worth the hassle. Girls are confusing. I don't know what to say to them. They're a mystery to me, blah, 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 blah. And, oh, by the way, I masturbate 15 times a day.
Yeah, you don't want to touch that guy's keyboard after,
No, unless he, well, there's some horrible things I was about to say, but I'm going to shut myself up. And so my point is, we're now at a place where young men, more so than women, are doing the following calculus, which is, I don't want to develop these skills. I'm not developing these skills. I don't have to develop these skills because when I'm going through puberty and the testosterone starts to pound through my body, well, in the old days, we had to learn to play guitar. We had to be a great student. We had to be a great. We had to figure out.
We had to
things.
peacock our dresses or whatever, right? Like
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
There's this great old John Mellencamp song where he sings, "Forget about that macho shit and learn how to play guitar," right? And so young men figured out, okay, if I'm going to be with a woman, I need to be a desirable young man. And what are the things that women desire? And then I'm going to pursue those things, at least in part, because if I become successful at fill in the blank, I might get a girl. And maybe I learn how to walk across the gymnasium and ask one to dance, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess what? They're not developing any of that anymore. And the reason is their early sexual desire can be fulfilled on the internet, and it's easy.
Yeah.
And I'm not railing against porn necessarily. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just reporting what I read, and in particular, what young women tell me.
Well, I believe this, but Christopher, this is shockingly sad because the thesis that we could become creator capitalists is not going to materialize for the people that cannot do this. Right?
Well,
like, because if you cannot
funny.
go talk to a girl, what are you going to go create? Right? Like that as to go with this metaphor, right? I think you're going to be afraid of taking risks.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot you're going to be afraid of. And, it's funny we're talking about this. I just had this conversation this week with a young gal who's about 25 years old. I actually posted about this, and it was interesting to see the responses. And it was a group of us, and we're just sharing some things about life. And she was sharing a date that she'd been on. And I said to her, "Oh, how's your dating life? You have a boyfriend, or what's going on?" And she started to roll her eyes and say, "Oh, it's fucking terrible." I said, "Well, tell me about that." And the sentence that came out of her mouth, Alex, stopped me in my tracks. She said, "Young men today want to be women." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, there's a whole trans thing." But she said, even with that to the side, they're passive. They won't ask you to dance. They won't hit on you in a bar or a restaurant. They won't do any of that stuff. And they don't know anything.
Fear of rejection plus instant gratification.
What's that?
Is fear of rejection plus desire for instant gratification?
Maybe, but what she said is they're basically, she said they're soy boys. They're weak. They're effeminate. They all hang together like a gaggle of girls. They don't have any ambition. They don't have any drive. And she said, and they all want to be influencers. And there's this great quote by G. Michael Hoff. He's an author. And the quote goes like this: strong men create good times.
Right.
Good times create weak men. And weak men create hard times. And this is my biggest fear for the Western world right now, is we've created an entire society of, and listen, some people are going to argue with me about this, but it's weak men. And men have been left behind. Men aren't graduating. Men aren't being successful in the workforce. Men aren't, young men and boys are not being successful in school. They're burying themselves in video games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The unfortunate outcome, at least in part, by the women's movement, which I completely support, has been this. There's a radical feminization of men, certainly here in the United States. And, you know, it's what George Carlin called the pussification of America. And I'm not talking about being macho, and I'm not talking about any of those things. I'm talking about strong men, successful in their careers, ambitious, driven to create and do things of value too. Listen, my mother and grandmother said to me, Christopher, you need to make something of yourself.
Right.
And essentially what this young gal that I was talking to this week said is the problem with young men is they don't want to make something of themselves. They're these mushy, uncommunicative, digital donkeys who want to be influencers. This is what she said to me. This is not my assessment. This is what this young woman said to me this fucking week.
Well, so this is tragedy because our industry is potentially enabling an acceleration of this, right? Because basically what you've brought up is that yes, there's some natural societal moves towards this, but the point of instant gratification culture where there is an entertainment and distraction a moment away, okay, and the matchmaking, like the dating or whatever, the sort of that's away. There's a perception that because I'm on LinkedIn, there's another job for me immediately somewhere else away. That feels like it's not helping modern humans be good at being human, which is, persist at ambitious wanderings, right? Going and explore, yes. Go on adventures. And yes. I agree with this observation. I after GSB, I went backpacking around the world, and I still remember a very similar conversation with a girl that I was trying to sweeten to myself in Hong Kong. And she was telling me the reason she was talking to me, which was, I don't know why, but, Alex, the Chinese men, they're so boring. They just sit and watch video games. And this was like, a while ago, right? And so there was this video game was a early indicator of subcultures of people not going and pursuing ambitious projects. And one of the things that really motivates me in having conversations with people like yourself, or in what we're working on at Relayto is, for example, making complex ideas difficult, regulated but important stuff, making it accessible, so that knowing that we're distracted, knowing that we are Instagram trained and TikTok trained, we could still navigate through the interesting pieces, still have the context, still have the ambition to get through and use the technology to help us tackle important big things. And what I worry about this is back to the AI world, it's becoming so easy to be a fake expert, right? Like I chat GPT'd something and I know I'm an expert, right? And you're saying that it's going to disappear, but I wonder, like, what would be your advice for this generation of people that are entering the workforce, people that are managing those entering the workforce, for how to continue to set the bar, to have your career, right? To have bigger ambitions, men or women, because I think the women are still probably impacted by some of this cultural and technology influences just as much as
No
men.
question. No question.
So what would be your wisdom? And I'm like, the tragedy is that we probably need to let you go because we've been at it for a couple hours now. But I would like to leave on the note of like, what would be your advice to the future generations?
Perfect. So before I answer the question, let me say this contextually, because I think the setup you just laid out, Alex, is very important. And the lens through which I process what you just said is this. The definition of what a human being is changing now. We are in the cocoon as we go from native analogs to the first couple generations of native digitals. And I don't know when we'll come out of the cocoon, but the definition of what a human being is literally changing because technology is central to our lives. When we say AI is going to be a co-founder of our career and our business, we're also saying AI is a co-founder of our life. And most people would rather lose a body part than their iPhone. And most of us would not want to give up our iPhone for a day, never mind a week or a month. And is there something bad about all that? For sure. You know, nuclear technology can be an incredibly powerful source of clean energy and the most evil thing we can unleash on each other. Guns are used to protect people, and they're used to do horrible things to people. And so there's no technology that's inherently good or bad. You know, you look at something simple like Facebook. I think Mark Zuckerberg is fucking evil. And there's a long list of evil things that he and his company have done. And they have connected people. They have allowed people who don't see each other all the time to see photos of their kids at the baseball game or whatever it is, to have grandparents who don't live nearby. So is Facebook evil? I think it probably is. Do I still use it because of some of the value I get out of feeling connected to people I don't see very often? I do. And I don't think Zuckerberg's a good person. And on balance, I don't love the company. I admire many of the things they've done, but I'm also disgusted by many of the things they've done. And so I think that's the big point. It's not the technology, right? And with AI is how we're going to cure cancer. There's no question about that. We are going to solve disease, right? The breakthroughs in longevity that are happening pre-AI were outstanding. Post-AI, you know, babies being born today could see 150. This is what the experts tell me. I'm not an expert in this. I've had longevity experts on, right? Anyway, so any technology breakthrough can be used for evil or greatness, and it's a spectrum. So that's point A. Point B, I think being digitally savvy is the ticket to the dance. So if I was a young person, here, I'll give you a perfect example. I know young people today. When I say young, I'm talking about late teens, you know, sort of late teens to late 20s.
Okay.
So I know they basically fall into two buckets. There's the, oh shit, nobody's hiring young people anymore. I just read this horrible report. I've applied for 27 jobs in the last 3 weeks online. I haven't even heard back from anybody. I'm sick and tired of getting ghosted by companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what to do. I'm flipping burgers or doing something, but I can't. I have a degree in fill in the blank, and I can't. And I'm doing everything I know, but you know, times are tough out there, and companies can digitally ghost me and ignore me, and they're not hiring me because of AI and la 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 la. So that's one whole crowd. And that one, at least in my little world, that one's very, very loud. And then at Category Pirates, we have and do employ some interns. Late teens, early 20s. We have a recent college grad who built with one other person who's probably maybe 30, most of our AI.
Mhm.
Well, here's the aha. This is the genius. First of all, they're doing what we talked about before. The young people who are thriving today are not filling out job applications on a fucking website. They're in the game and they figure out how to use their native digital skills to make a difference for native analogs. We've written much about this.
They're coming to a guy like you or me and saying, I could solve these 5 problems for you. Here's my, maybe solved a couple of them already. Which ones matter the most? And that's the internship.
And sometimes problems I wouldn't have thought about. I'll give you a simple one.
Yeah.
So I have 4 or 5 learning differences: ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, I call it, it's actually a superpower. I call it dysfucklia. Well, what that means is I'm often late. I can't find my keys. I can't, it's just part of my life.
But you're worth the wait. You're worth the wait. Let's agree.
Well, and I've done all right for a kid with no GED. Anyway, so one of these younger folks, this is a teenager, was building some little agents and helping out with some of our AI stuff. Because we're AI first. Everything we do is AI first. We're selling AI products now at Category Pirates. Pirate EddieBot, you can go have a conversation with it about anything you want with category design. Anyway, so somewhere along the line, this young man hears about my problem and my dysfucklia, meaning that I'm often 10 minutes late and this and that and the other. So he says, remember, this kid's not 20. He goes, oh, that's simple. Let me build an agent for that. And so guess what? I get a fucking text message 15 minutes before anything I have to do from and it says, hey, your podcast with Alex is in 15 minutes. Don't be a donkey. And it has improved my accuracy, my tardiness by at least 50%, although you'd have to talk to Eddie and Katrina to find out for sure. Anyway, that's a tiny, simple little example. But here is a teenager who figured out that there's this small company that's run by these 3 people that's doing this AI stuff, that was a friend of a friend, whatever, got connected, started to do a few things, and has been an intern. So my point is, find a way to be valuable. And in specific, the advantage you have if you're a native digital is massive for native analogs.
That's right.
Eddie and I call it our digital wheelchair. Yeah. And we have lots of people who push us around in a digital wheelchair. And they are invaluable to us.
Right. They would not stand out to their peers, but to us, or to somebody even further along. Absolutely. So
they are not going to get hired by OpenAI to build the next. No. They're quote unquote regular kids who are smart, who are savvy, who've been living with this, and they figured out that if they can be a bridge, if they can be a translator, they're native analogs like me, like you, like Eddie, like many, who are deeply tech savvy, have a vision of what we want, have ideas, want to be educated, want to learn, want to change. Look, you're talking to somebody who wrote one way my entire life. And in the last very short little while, I will write without AI.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing. People say, oh, nobody likes change. Nobody likes change. Nobody likes change. Bullshit. We love change. If you show us a solution to a problem that's a big problem for us, or even a problem we didn't know we had, and we see we have an aha moment, we can't unsee it. We want to have it. Most people fall asleep with their phones.
The only thing we love. So maybe this is a formula. I think we love change because we are more lazy than we are averse to change. And so
yeah, maybe. I mean, I like being lazy. I really do. Yeah. I like goofing off. And there's a country artist I love named Robert Earl Keen. He's got lots of great songs, and he's got this song where he sings, I kind of like this, doing nothing. It's something that I do. He's got several songs about wasting his life away. So I'm a fan of that. But that said, I think it's more than just our natural laziness as a lazy person myself. Um,
So it's lazy
look,
and legendary at the same. So it could be maybe it's friction
well, yeah, it's
reducing.
like, look,
Maybe it's yeah.
the car I drive today has got, I don't know, 3 to 5x more horsepower than the first car I ever drove. I fucking love it. Right. And I wouldn't go back to those old cars. As a matter of fact, my wife and I wanted to buy an old Bronco, and the Bronco that we bought is a fully restored old body. But that's the only thing. It looks like an old Bronco, but it's got all the new shit in it. It cost $1 billion, I'll have you know. But anyway, and so the point is, we are open to the change if it makes a difference. Sometimes that's our laziness, but sometimes it's our creativity. Eddie is a legendary writing partner for me. Katrina is a legendary writing partner for me. And now Lucy is a writing partner for all of us. Yeah. So we have a fourth person in our company. It's great.
That's legendary, an exciting way to wrap up, Christopher. I think it's an optimistic note.
I'm very optimistic about the future.
It's a very optimistic note, right?
Very
because
optimistic.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the greatest.
Words. Yeah.
So you want to talk about countries and nations and societies. I believe one of the biggest problems with the part of the world that you come from is communism crushes entrepreneurship, crushes it, because the government can take over at any time. I would posit to you that there is no greater force for good on the planet than entrepreneurship. There are other that I would say are equally good. You look at the United States. We've had more startups create more value over the last 30 years than any other place in the world. Today, Europe is dying. And the reason Europe is dying is there are no entrepreneurs.
So it's a finite mindset. It's a finite
Correct.
So in the Soviet Union, there was sir, go ahead.
Yes, it's really about this. This is the fundamental difference between capitalism and communism, in my opinion. It's the difference between fighting over scarcity and collaborating over abundance.
Yes.
Because when human beings collaborate on abundance, we do incredible things. We cure diseases. We feed people who couldn't get fed. We go to the moon and maybe Mars, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When human beings collaborate to create new value, incredible things happen. And when we fight over scarcity, we kill the shit out of each other. And what entrepreneurship in a capitalist system does is it harnesses that human drive to create for good.
And AI increases the range of what abundance could be. So it could be an amplifier on this.
Absolutely. It's the amplifier on it. What's my point? There's never been a greater time to be an entrepreneur or a creator of any kind of value, right? Because of this technology. And so the people who embrace AI and become creator capitalists will be the most productive, most successful, most innovative, most creative, and wealthiest human beings that ever lived, because the new definition of what a worker is emerging. We think it's a creator capitalist. And the new definition of ultimately what a human will be with the AI is being created in front of us. We want to be part, if you're smart, you want to be part of creating that future. You want to be on the edge experimenting and asking questions like, how do I solve new and different problems for people that I care about with AI? How do I create net new things of value around topics that I care about with AI, et cetera, et cetera? The future needs people with this mindset, with this, I can design the future. My future is up to me. I can create value, and I can do it with partners, co-founders, and we can do this together, and we can make a difference. We think we can make a difference in the world. And oh, by the way, the ubiquitous capabilities of the internet coupled with AI means in the past, I had to have all these hard to get, expensive analog resources if I wanted to create great things. Today, I can create legendary digital things. And all I need is a laptop and a browser or a smartphone and an AI. And so for those of us who want to create radically different futures, who want to live fully expressed lives where we do things that are powerful, that are creative, that are innovative, that in my opinion are core to the human spirit, our ability to do that is greater today than ever before. And that's why I'm radically optimistic. And it's also why I ring the bell so hard about the areas of our world that I think are missing this. Because the delta between the haves and the have-nots going forward is going to get bigger. The number of people who bitch and complain that they got fucked by AI is going to go up exponentially. And the number of people who use the tech to do legendary things is also going to go up exponentially. I know which side I'm trying to be on.
Thus spake Christopher Lochhead. This has been amazing. Christopher, if anybody has half a brain and half a heart, they want to follow you for the rest of their lives, where can they find you?
I'm all over the damn place.
You're all over the place.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to hook up with everything, just go to categorypirates.com and you'll find me. Yeah.
Please do. You will thank me and Christopher for it if you've heard him for the first time now. All right. This has been amazing. Thank you. I cherish, honestly, this was one of the reasons why I started the podcast, to have conversations like this.